Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for January 17th, 2018. This is Peter Sciretta. We have arrived in Park City for the Sundance Film Festival. I am currently recording this intro in an urgent care facility in Park City, Utah. I was a dumbass. I slipped and fell on a hill while trying to cross a street, and I thankfully or unthankfully caught my fall with my hand. My wrist is now ballooned to the size of an elephant, or maybe slightly less than that. And I have just gotten x-rays. It looks like it might be a fracture. So not a good way to start off the Sundance Film Festival. But thankfully, we have a banked show to bring you, a debate over the ending of Star Wars Last Jedi between me and Brad Oman. We will be updating the podcast throughout the week from Sundance Film Festival, so keep checking back for updates from Sundance, and please enjoy this banked episode. And to any of those of you who are concerned over my condition, I will provide updates on Twitter and in future episodes. I want to thank everybody who has already reached out on social media and sent their well wishes. We'll see how it ends up being, but it definitely looks like a fracture at this point. And yes. Enjoy this episode on Star Wars Last Jedi. If you have not seen the movie, do not listen to this episode. Thank you.
Hey folks, this is SlashFilm.com managing editor Jacob Hall, and I am here to introduce a new feature here on Slash Film Daily. If you guys like it, it could become a regular thing, so let us know. This is called The Great Debate. Two Slash Film writers enter a room. There'll be an exchange of words, and you guys decide who wins the conversation. And this pilot version, this debut version, was inspired by Peter Sciretta and Brad Oman having a knockdown, drag-down fight in the Slash Film Slack that was so good that I said, let's press pause on this and record this. We have to. But it requires a little bit of background knowledge. So, Peter, since you're one of the arguing parties, I want you to explain the situation as neutrally as possible without hedging your opinion too much. Let the listeners know what happened to get to this point.
Okay. Yesterday or last week on Slash Film Daily, we had a discussion at the end in the spoiler room. By the way, we're going to get into spoilers. So if you have not seen Star Wars Last Jedi, you should probably turn this off right now and go watch that and then come back. But we kind of had this discussion. I kind of brought up the idea that at the end of Star Wars The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker uses these powers, these magical powers that we've never seen before, the ability to astral project himself from across the galaxy in order to not defeat the First Order, but to keep them at bay and allow the Resistance to leave and have him become the legend that they need to spark the rebellion across the galaxy. And I was arguing that basically, it's like a movie introducing a magical power at the end of the movie that has never been established previously. That is the thing used to resolve the climactic situation. And we had a discussion. Brad was on this discussion on the episode. And some of our listeners, actually a programmer at Bungie, project lead at Bungie. It's amazing that we have some listeners that are like in these huge roles at these companies and stuff. Anyways, he started a conversation with me on Twitter, and he brought Ryan Johnson into it. And which, by the way, no offense to our listener Mark, who I appreciate, but I want to say I don't like it when people bring filmmakers or actors into kind of like this negative situation. I think it's kind of unfair for them. But Ryan Johnson, being the great guy that he is, responded to our conversation on Twitter. And by the way, I'm not sure Ryan Johnson has listened to the episode that you guys have. He might just be listening to the short discussion I had with Mark on Twitter. But Ryan Johnson responded, I should stay out of this, but ... Were any aspects of force use in the original trilogy, ghost grabbing or force grabbing objects, force ghosts, even the Jedi mind trick, explicitly set up before they happened. I'll take my answer off the air. ... So this response kind of spawned this debate. I think we're set up for this discussion, right, Jacob?
Yeah, nutshell version. Peter thinks that Last Jedi uses cheats to introduce new force powers in ways that go against the spirit of Star Wars, against the spirit of storytelling. And Brad thinks that they are perfectly fine and work within the context of Star Wars and the film itself. That's the. Am I correct in summing those two point of views up?
You are, but can I be clear about one thing? There's a lot of Star Wars fans out there. They're getting nicknamed the Star Wars Bros or Fan Bros, who have a problem with the canon stuff, and that's not my problem here. I don't have any problem with Luke Skywalker having the ability to astral project himself across the galaxy, as long as he dies, because that's just an insane superpower, and if he didn't die, that would be a problem. But he does die, so I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think my problem is the use...
Okay, well, I want you to save this for your opening statement, which we'll get to in a second. So here's how it's going to work, guys. I'm going to give you each 2 minutes. You don't have to use all of the 2 minutes, but I will cut you off. For you to make an opening statement with your overall position on the matter, you will then get 1 minute to respond, and I will give you follow-up questions as a neutral devil's advocate to challenge you guys and make you defend yourself further. And we're going to see where this goes. This is our first version of the Great Debate. We're going to kind of feel around and see what feels good. So I'm setting a timer right in front of me right now. Peter, since you already get started a little bit, I'm going to let you have 2 minutes to get going. So on count of 3, 3, 2, 1. Table's yours.
Okay, so like I said, I don't have a problem with this being in canon. I don't have a problem with Luke using this force powers. I don't even have a problem if he had used it earlier on in the movie. I think my problem lies in that those force powers have never been seen or hinted at in this movie or franchise are used to solve the climactic, to resolve the climactic situation at the end of this film. It's kind of like, at the end of any movie, if someone just pulled something out of their back pocket that no one knew about, usually in a movie, when you read screenwriting books, it's all about setup and payoff. And when someone does something like that, it should be, yes, a surprise. It should be a reveal, but it should also be like, oh my God, they set that up earlier. It should reward the audience because you're like, oh, I kind of knew about that or kind of had a feeling, they kind of set that up. And the fact that they didn't set it up, I think, I know a lot of people are using the Deus Ex Machina word, which is it's not the term for this, but it is kind of cheap storytelling. I think it's bad storytelling. And I think Rian Johnson saying just because they haven't set up any of the other force powers before they used them, which is, by the way, inaccurate. Luke at the end of A New Hope uses the Force to
30 seconds
to fire the missile and blow up the Death Star. He does it without the guiding computer, and that is set up earlier on in the film as Obi-Wan Kenobi is training him on the Millennium Falcon with the lightsaber and the drone ball thing. I forget what it's called. To trust his instincts. So I think that is set up.
5 seconds.
That is the end of my 2 minutes.
All right, 2 minutes exactly. Thanks, Peter. And Brad, you can get your opening statement now. I would recommend you save your direct rebuttals to Peter's statement later and just get your opening feelings straight out there. We can get into the nitty-gritty of direct responses in a little bit. Sound good?
Sure.
All right, you have the table in 3, 2, 1, go.
I don't think that this is bad storytelling at all, because the whole idea of not directly setting this up or giving any hint that this ability exists is to create the surprise and create a powerful moment in the storytelling. And even though you reference one singular force power that was previously set up in A New Hope, the fact remains that there is no really definitive borders for what the Force can and can't do. For lack of a better term, the Force is, akin to the idea of God or some kind of higher power in the world of the Star Wars universe. It's something that exists in all living things and everything around us. So to try and define the parameters of what the Force can and can't do is not only an impossible task, but it's never been indicated that those are the only things that the Force is capable of. And we've seen the Force expand beyond just moving things from the original trilogy, because Luke communicated to Leia when he was in trouble. Darth Vader and Luke had communication with each other. And so it's like these Force powers aren't defined to just moving things and having conversations with each other, through the mind. So you would stand to reason that Luke Skywalker's Force abilities, while they're probably not limitless, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have much stronger abilities that we haven't seen showcased before. And the reason that we haven't seen them showcased before and they're not hinted at is because, as we see in the movie, it is such a fatal power to exhibit that it kills you. So no one has done it before, and you wouldn't try to do it before because of the potential that it would kill you. So there's no reason to set it up storytelling wise. And the fact that it isn't hinted at beforehand, I think, makes it one of the best moments that we've seen
15 seconds
in the entire Star Wars franchise. And that's what makes it such a great moment in the movie. And I don't think that not introducing it makes it a flaw or a piece of bad storytelling whatsoever.
All right, 2 minutes exactly. Once again, good job, guys. All right, so what I'm going to do, with my timer. All right, so now if you guys had your opening statements, it's time for rebuttals. You can get, starting with Peter, you have 1 minute to respond directly to what Brad said. Then Brad will get 1 minute to respond to Peter. Then I'll have some follow-up questions for both of you. So like I said, 1 minute, so make sure every word counts. Peter, the table is yours again in 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, I think a lot of your argument was kind of like fallacies. I don't want definitive borders of the Force. I never said that. I like that the Force is kind of this thing that could be anything. I have no problem with Luke having abilities not shown before. A lot of time has gone by. He is a Master Jedi, and he should be capable of doing things that we've never seen before. I think my problem is introducing those at the end of the second act in that climactic moment is kind of like pulling out a trump card that you didn't know existed. And the fact that, I don't know, I don't want to sound dismissive, but I feel like, I've read a lot of screenwriting books, I've read a lot of books about storytelling, and I think to do that is wrong in any kind of story ever.
All right, let me reset the clock. Brad, the floor is now yours to respond to Peter, his opening statements, and his rebuttal to you. And go.
Here's the thing. You bring out these more powerful elements of whatever weapon you have at your disposal when you need them the most. That's the reason we see this happen now. And so I don't think it's magical or convenient that this happens. It's just what's required for this moment to work. I mean, if you want to talk about, moments that seem too convenient within the realm of a universe, think about the fact in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, we have no idea what the concept of priori incantatem is, but that proves to be the exact same thing that saves Harry Potter's life in the graveyard from dying at the hands of Voldemort. But we're not up in arms.
It's not like I don't have a problem with that. So.
Peter, this is Brad's floor.
Yep, go ahead.
All right.
We're not, but I don't see many people being up in arms about that, because that's something that is later defined and is set to be part of the overarching world of how magic is used and how it works within that universe. And so just because we haven't had it explicitly explained to us
5 seconds,
the parameters of these powers or anything like that, doesn't mean that, it won't be later.
Time's up. Okay. Since Peter clearly has something to respond to that, I really want to hear his response. So we're going to have one more round of rebuttals. Once again, 1 minute. Peter, I'll give you the countdown, and Brad, you have a chance to respond, and then we'll get into some additional questions, because I'm very curious to hear what Peter had to say there. So 3, 2, 1, floor is yours, Peter.
Okay, so I think, you know what, we keep on bringing back up the history of Star Wars and previous instances, and I think just to say, like, we didn't see the Emperor's Force lightning till the end of Return of the Jedi as a good example of why this is acceptable is not acceptable, because I'm not saying just because something has been done before in Star Wars or other movies doesn't mean it's good storytelling. And good storytelling usually always has setups and payoffs. Ask any storyteller. If you go back to the days of the hero's journey, there was Deus Ex Machina, and that was bad. It's universally considered by storytellers and screenwriters to be bad to have something that you pull out at the last second and it changes everything.
All right, Brad, you have 1 minute response. Starting 3, 2, 1, go.
When it comes to defending nearly any of the aspects of the Star Wars universe within the realm of The Last Jedi that people have problems with, I take solace in the fact that most of the explanations that I've come up with myself justifying the things that people seem to be upset about fall directly in line with exactly the same viewpoint and thought process that Rian Johnson had when he was writing and directing this movie. The fact remains is that there are so many logistic points here that make this a definitive moment in Star Wars storytelling and not a moment of bad writing or convenient writing, is that it enhances the idea of what the Force can be, how powerful Luke Skywalker is, and what this moment will mean to the rest of the Star Wars franchise. And I think that it is perfectly placed, and to foreshadow it and give any credence that this power exists beforehand, with the exception of the limitless parameters of the Force we've seen beforehand, would weaken that moment.
Time is up. All right, so that was our initial back and forth. I want to kick off this next section by reading an email from Patrick in Sweden. He apologizes in his email for his English, so we're going to make do with what it is. It's otherwise a very well-written email. So I'm going to read it as written. Hi, Peter. Great podcast. Love the quick updates and stuff. I don't usually respond or discuss stuff on the internet, but just for fun, I wanted to add a comment on the last episode concerning the ending of The Last Jedi. I thought the whole thing with Rey and Kylo was a perfect setup for the thing Luke did at the end. The way they could see each other across the universe was the same way Luke projected himself in those people's minds. He was just much stronger and in more control. So for me, that thing didn't feel like it came out of the blue once it was revealed. All right, so the basic question here is, isn't the Force conversations between Kylo Ren and Rey, aren't those actually setting up Luke projecting at the end of the movie? So I'm going to set 1 minute on the clock again, and I'm going to let Brad go first. So Brad, you feel free to take this email and address it in any way you want, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Yes, I think they definitely could be conceived as that. While I consider them to be more so evolutions of the way we've seen Luke use the Force to communicate to Leia, or Darth Vader to use the Force to communicate to Luke after their battle, or anything like that, I think that you could easily see this as set up for that, because what it shows in there is that there's some physical transference and visual transference between the two, because Kylo Ren specifically talks about see the vague sight that there is between them, that where he can't entirely see where she is, but he can see her, and she can see him, which is why she makes the reference to him putting on a cowl when he's standing there shirtless with those
15 seconds
high pants. And so I think it sets up the ability to be able to project images and things using the Force across a long distance.
Okay. Peter, you have the table in 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, I'm going to do a bad thing here and agree with this, or not agree with this assessment, but consider this assessment. I think it is a good argument because, Kylo does feel the rain, and also, they're touching each other, and then Luke sees Kylo in the hut. Yes, this could be maybe a setup for that later on thing. This argument I can get behind. I can't get behind the fact that someone just pulls out magical powers in the end and uses them to resolve the climactic situation. But I think this situation, if Rian Johnson was using this force Tinder connection between
Force time.
I'm using a force Tinder. Connection
15 seconds
to connect them. I think it's too subtle of the setup. Sure, it's something that you could see in your second viewing or third viewing and be like, oh, they did set it up. But I don't know. I just think Rian Johnson could have easily set this up better.
Time is up. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question that's my question now. And like I said, I'm trying to remain as neutral as possible. So I'm just asking a question that I want to hear both of you address. which is Star Wars. Who am I? Star Wars borrows from so much mythology, so much the idea of the hero's journey, and from our mythological heroes of the past, both in fiction and in reality. So, my question, I'm going to have Peter take this one first in a moment, isn't Luke Skywalker showcasing an amazing unseen power in line with the legends of old? Like, for example, we didn't know Hercules could clean a stable in a matter of time that no human being could. It was never previously established that he had stable cleaning powers. That's a bad example, but hopefully you catch my drift. Isn't this in line with the kind of storytelling Star Wars has always been? So, Peter, this is yours to yell about or agree with in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
No, I mean, I do agree with you. I think that if you read, like, Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces, or you read Christopher, whatever his name's, reading of that into the screenwriting world, they kind of talk about how old stories and mythological stories kind of had those moments. And I think they kind of discussed that modern audiences are more sophisticated and they want setup to have that kind of payoff. A payoff without a setup is a cheat. That's what I would say.
Okay. Brad, same question, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Floor is yours.
No, I completely disagree with that, because there are times when it's perfectly fine and even preferred to break what are considered to be the quote-unquote rules of storytelling. Whether it's something as simple as telling a story, outside of chronological narrative order, or something like that. You introducing an element that has heretofore essentially been unseen in this current form isn't bad storytelling. It isn't a cheat. It's good storytelling because it creates a oh wow moment or holy cow moment that didn't require setup. I think that to say that audiences are more sophisticated because they need setup in order to make a payoff worth it is ridiculous, and it's almost insulting that an audience
seconds
needs that kind of information to truly appreciate a payoff in any given story.
Okay, I have one last question before we make some closing remarks, and this one is, and Brad will be taking this one first. Even if we're okay with this ability being established out of the blue in the end, like Brad is arguing, wouldn't have been more satisfying if it was established earlier? Wouldn't it have been a better narrative choice if the seeds were planted in a more clear way so that we had that aha moment? So, Brad, you have the floor first, but what do you think about that? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, floor is yours.
I mean, I think my initial response is, would it have been more satisfying if there were hints that Darth Vader was Luke's father before we got to The Empire Strikes Back? Would it have been satisfying if there were hints that Leia was Luke's sister before we found it out in the Star Wars? No, because these are surprises. They're story elements that are introduced at an opportune time where they take advantage of the fact that the audience is not in the know of a certain detail or a certain power, and uses it to its advantage to be a surprise moment. It's like that's why that's why twists work, especially ones that don't require setup but don't have an insane amount of setup. And I think that's why this moment in The Last Jedi works so well.
Okay, Peter, your response in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Floor is yours.
Okay, I've never hated one of your responses more than this one, Brad, because you're basically arguing that, like, The Sixth Sense should have, ended with that twist without any setup for that, and that would have been a more effective ending without all the hints and stuff. But no, it wouldn't. The great thing about The Sixth Sense is having all those hints and having that realization. It's not just a surprise. It is a surprise, and then it's followed by, oh, I'm trying to piece it together in my mind. Oh my god, they had set this up. They're so smart. And yes, Darth Vader being his father, I think would have been better if they had left some clues. Luke, Leia. No, I'm not saying spelling it out. I'm saying subtle, very subtle, that no one picks up on.
15 seconds.
Clues. I think you can't. I don't know. I do think George Lucas was flying on the seat of his pants with the original trilogy and yes, it created some of the best movies of all time, but they aren't perfect.
Time's up. Okay. On that note, you each get 1 more minute to sum up your case, make a plea to listeners, and we're going to go ahead and let Peter go first, as we did with the opening statements. So 60 seconds. Let everybody know why you're right. 3, 2, 1. Make the plea, Peter.
This is gonna be the worst plea ever because I'm not sure I'm right. I just know that I have an opinion. It doesn't ruin the movie for me. I like the movie a lot, but it does seem kind of like a cheat. And I think in today's society, we are valuing surprise over good storytelling more and more. And, I don't have any great examples of this, but I do think that, like, surprise is good, yes, especially when there is a setup in there, that aha moment. But I think surprise for just surprise sake is not good storytelling.
Okay. Brad, your final statement. Make the plea for your case. 3, 2, 1. The floor is yours.
The fact that Peter conceded that the point about there being a subtle setup of Luke being able to use this ability by way of the forced time conversations between Kylo and Rey is really all the evidence I need that this moment works. Simply because he just gave credit to the Sixth Sense for having such incredible, subtle references to the fact that Bruce Willis is dead the entire time. So that nullifies Peter's argument that he wants the hints to be more obvious than what Rian Johnson laid in The Last Jedi. And so I think that Rian Johnson perfectly sets up this moment with subtlety and delivers a moment that will be one of the best from any Star Wars movie.
Can I please get a 30-second rebuttal?
Okay, I'm going to allow each of you one 30-second final statement to your final statement. But this is it. Once you get your last 30 seconds, I'm cutting you guys off and ending this segment forever. So, Peter, you get 30 seconds starting now.
Listen, I understand the argument that the Rey Kylo Force Tinder thing is to set up. That is a good argument. I don't understand the argument that you don't need any setup or hints of it at all until that climactic resolution. And I think that I think that when you're seeing Sixth Sense for the first time, at the end of Sixth Sense, you have realizations of stuff that happened earlier. I think with Force Awakens, with Last Jedi, I think when you get to the end and you get that shock, you don't discover that stuff. If that is a setup, you don't discover that stuff until multiple viewings.
Okay, Brad, and you get your 30 seconds. This is the last word of the matter. I'm making that call. So 3, 2, 1, go.
I think a film requiring multiple viewings in order to understand some of its finer points is exactly what makes good cinematic storytelling. And the sheer fact that every single time I've seen Star Wars: The Last Jedi, audiences have cheered and clapped at that moment when Luke Skywalker is revealed to be force projecting himself across the galaxy shows that Rian Johnson did the right thing by making this a surprise moment and not setting it up in an obvious way.
Okay, so that's the end of the debate.
I'm not arguing that he should set it up in an obvious way. I want to clearly say that.
Earlier, you literally said, "I wish Rian Johnson would have set it up in a more obvious way."
I am the debate master here.
Not mine.
You need to silence yourselves. The debate will continue among Slash Film's listeners now, where they will chime in on Twitter. They will send emails. They will leave comments. Let us know both your thoughts, but more importantly, who won this fight? Who was right? Brad or Peter? Peter or Brad? We want to know. And also, let us know if you
send it to peter@slashfilm.com, peter@slashfilm.com.
Or maybe we can set up like a Twitter poll through the Slash Film Daily account or the Slash Film account that actually asks people.
We could do that. As well.
Yeah, we'll figure that. Well, Peter will figure that out since he's the one in charge of actually getting the show put together. But let us know. Did you enjoy this debate? Did you enjoy listening to this? Did you enjoy this format? Let us know, because we argue about stuff like this all the time in private. And if you guys like hearing it, we'll argue in public for you.
And I do have some thoughts on, this as a whole, because if you think about it, if Snoke was able to astral project Rey to Kylo, first of all, that would mean that he knows where Rey is, which is kind of weird. Second of all, that would mean that he can do so without getting himself killed, like Luke Skywalker. So does that mean he's more powerful than Luke Skywalker? And then third of all, Snoke gets killed, and then they are still having these astral projection visions with each other. So wouldn't that kill Rey or Kylo? See, that's what makes me think that this isn't astral projection. Yeah, and I do want to say one last thing, and this isn't about the argument, but I think all of us would agree that it's okay to have criticisms about a movie you love. And just because I have problems with this thing, it doesn't mean I don't like the movie or don't like where Ryan Johnson took it. And I think there's a attitude out there, especially on film Twitter, that like that subtlety of that has gone away, that you can't have issues with something you love, which I think is a shame.
No, I totally agree with that, because I don't think Last Jedi is a perfect movie by any means. I think it has some problems with the pacing, and it's a little bit long. But yeah, I agree that we need to start realizing and understanding that there is a middle ground where you can have movies that you really love still have some problems with it, and it's not this immediate, oh, this is garbage, or oh, this is a masterpiece mentality.
And with that, as you can see, everyone on slashfilm.com are actually friends, no matter how much we yell at each other. So thanks for listening. Peter, do you want to close this out?
Yes. And Brad, where can we find more of your work online?
Always on slashfilm.com and Twitter at Ethan_Anderton. And if you like long rambling and arguments about Star Wars The Last Jedi, feel free to check out the special Star Wars The Last Jedi discussion episode of my podcast, Go Flix Yourself. There's plenty of debate about the Force abilities and some of the decisions made by Ryan Johnson as a director and writer for this movie.
You can find more of all their work on slashfilm.com. You can find Slash Film Daily on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. You can send us emails at peter@slashfilm.com. And please go rate and review us on iTunes. Spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.